Hello, I'm Andrew Hara, the host of the Mom Squad. I wanted to tell you about my movies. All are available on Tubi, which is a free streaming service. The last one is a zombie drama about how a pandemic and isolation could drive a group of people mad. When the virus hits, John finds himself alone and scared until he meets Michael, his protector. But when Karina, another survivor, enters the mix, everything that John and Michael knew will be turned on its head. The last one is a zombie virus movie that's somehow even more relevant today. Plus, it has zombies. Check it out. Borderland is a mexploitation film about living in El Paso. When Sarah finds herself in debt to the cartels, she has until sunrise to find some missing monies with the help of her executioner. Borderland is a true midnight movie and a lot of fun. Finally, the documentary Humble Spirits tells the story of the Hahn family, including champion Jennifer Hahn from El Paso, Texas. The entire Hahn family has grown up in the combat sports and has helped shape who they are both in and out of the ring. Humble Spirits, a family of fighters, is the perfect documentary for boxing fans of all ages. Check out Tubi to watch all my films. And now, let's start the show. Do you like biopics? To me, the best ones are the ones that don't cover the entire subject's life from beginning to end, but more the ones that take a moment of their lives and use it as a metaphor for why these characters or people were so very important. Think movies like Ali from Michael Mann that focus on 10 years of the fighter's life as he wins the heavyweight belt, loses it because he refuses to participate in the draft, and then gains it back at the Rumble in the Jungle. Or The Social Network, which only covers the battle of ownership for Facebook from two different lawsuits. Or The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, which only covers the end of the dangerous outlaw's life. These are some of the best biopics ever made. And what they all have in common is none of them cover their subjects from earth to grave. Surely most of them, especially Muhammad Ali or Jesse James, had interesting enough lives that you could fill a whole movie with every year of their lives. But to me, that wouldn't work as well. I started wondering, why is that? Why does taking a part of their lives work so much better than trying to cover a person's story? I think it comes down to the kind of stories we tell. Hello, my name's Andrew Hanna, director of The Last Ones, a zombie film, Borderland, a mexploitation film, and The Empty Space, an upcoming cosmic horror. And welcome to the deep dive. If you look at the basic structure of most stories, they're broken up into three parts: the introduction to the world and the characters, an inciting incident where the characters' lives is uprooted or changed. They must go on a quest, mental or physical, to overcome it, which leads us into the third part, the climax, where they reach their conclusion and come out better, or at least changed in some way. Usually that doesn't work in a biopic because our lives don't work like that. There's no better example of this than the Young Guns franchise. If you haven't seen it, Young Guns is a story of New Mexico's most famous outlaw, Billy the Kid. Specifically the part where he was involved in the Lincoln County War, which took place from 1877 to 1878. The movie starts with a young man being brought to a ranch owned by British Bill Tunstall. Tunstall runs a general store which puts him in direct competition with Lawrence Murphy, a well-connected businessman who is as dangerous as any gun. Luckily, Tunstall makes a habit of finding lost men and helping them become gentlemen.
I've had you pegged as the type that likes educating young boys, Englishman.
No, not that way. I mean, he helps them learn how to cook and clean and write. Everything that could be considered manly in 1877 when words still had meaning.
But you can't be any geek off the street. Gotta be handy with the steel, if you know what I mean, earn your keep.
The group of boys call themselves the Regulators, and they include Doc Spurlock, Jose Chavez y Chavez, Dick Brewer, and others. The beginning of the film introduces us to the newest recruit by the name of William Bonney, or as he would eventually be known, Billy the Kid. Billy lives with the man as they become a sort of de facto family, growing closer as they work on the farm. That is until one day, Tunstall is killed by Murphy. The boys lose everything in an instant: their home, their father figure, and their way of life. They quickly get deputized, and the plan is to arrest Murphy's men. That's the plan, anyway. As they enact it, they start to do outlaw things, and eventually they go to war as Murphy has the army and bounty hunters on the trail of the regulators. During this time, we see why Billy becomes the Prince of the West. He's brash, charming, hates authority,
Reap the whirlwind, Sheriff Brady. Reap it.
and most of all,
Hey, Pepin! I'm hearing you, Bonnie. I see you got Charlie Crawford down there with you.
he's a hell of a shot.
Hey, Pepin! Charlie Crawford ain't with you anymore.
Young Guns is a great western that really served to be a starring vehicle for a lot of the Brat Pack. But it also has important themes of family, whether the ones we have or the ones we make.
So you got 3 or 4 good pals. Well, then you got yourself a tribe. There ain't nothing stronger than that. Where are your family now, Chavez?
What makes a legend, and even throws in a few jabs at the way media builds a narrative, or fake news.
There's a picture here. It says Billy the Kid, but it ain't Billy.
Well, that's me. This is bullshit. Papers can't get anything right.
It could have just been a fun movie about hot guys playing cowboys, but Young Guns makes a point to be about more. And it's particularly impressive that it shatters the idea of the lone cowboy without diminishing the legend of Billy the Kid. When released, the movie received mostly negative reviews from critics, but it was a box office hit, as it should have been, because the critics are always wrong, especially when they're talking about zombie movies or Borderland. But it was a huge success. So successful that a sequel was commissioned. And that's when it starts to fall apart. While Young Guns tells the story of the original Lincoln County War, Young Guns 2 covers the end of Billy's life, as well as many of the regulators. All the characters that survived the first film are back, but it does have a very different tone and outlook. The movie has an unusual framing device in that it starts in the 50s, as an attorney is looking for Bushy Bill Roberts. Who is Bushy Bill? Technically, he's nobody, but he claims that he is in fact Billy the Kid, and he wants a pardon that he was promised a long time ago. When the lawyer asks if he has any recognizable scars,
Scars or something? I don't know. You have any scars?
it's then that we learn that Billy the Kid was promised a fake pardon to get him in chains in an effort to make the West not quite as wild. The campaign also leads them to try and arrest all the regulators, going as far as to bring Doc back from New York, which is where he ended up in the first movie, to await trial. Billy, of course, rescues them with the help of his new crew, except for one member. That member being Pat Garrett, a friend of Billy's who's made sheriff in order to bring Billy in. It tests the limits of Billy's love of his friends, and plays with the importance of family themes that made the first one so good. But this film is not the fun western of the original. In fact, it is quite dark. Even the cinematography and wardrobe take the cues. Shadows, close-ups, and night replace the wide-open daytime feeling of the original. And earth tones replace the colorful outfits of the original. Well, colorful for a western. And while they do bring back some of our favorite characters, the new team members fits the tone of this new movie. None more than Arkansas Bob, played very well by Christian Slater. Bob is part of the regulators, but unlike the others, he's only in it for himself. He has no hesitation abandoning the rest, and is constantly on the search for glory.
Killed 65 men, not counting Mexicans and Indians. You must have heard of me. Come on, Rutabaga.
So much so that it gets him killed in my favorite scene. Another important character is Tim Follett, played by Baltazar Getty, which is a cool name, but it's hard to pronounce. A young member of the crew who wants to be just like Billy the Kid.
You want to ride with Billy the Kid? Is that what you want? You want to get leg shot in your leg like this?
Throughout the movie, he's constantly asking Billy if he can join, and Billy refuses until he's desperate. Eventually, he relents and instantly gets Tom killed.
You rode a 15-year-old boy straight into his grave, and the rest of us straight to hell.
While the original Billy did have a wild, spontaneous streak, it was often lighthearted, and he never seemed to try to put anyone in danger. But the sequel goes out of its way to show that the wildness has outstayed its welcome, and the consequences are catching up to the kid. This is played out in a scene with Henry French, played by Alan Ruck. The entire film, Henry has been trying to get a nickname like the Kid or Arkansas or Doc, but nothing seems to fit. After Tom's death, though, Billy gives him one.
Buckshot George. That's your name. You wanted a name? That's it. Buckshot George. It's a good name.
My name's Henry William French.
It's a good name, too.
This scene helps to show that Billy's influence does not hold the power it once did, and he's lost control of his crew. Even Doc and Chavez, having reserved themselves to a quiet life, treat Billy with hostility. They have been ripped out of their lives to become bits of the propaganda machine, and they hold the resentment towards Billy. This is another holdover theme of the original. And just like Billy, they eventually fall in acts of violence. Doc in a brazen last stand, and Chavez in a quiet moment of too much blood loss. It does feel like the Lincoln County War eventually does get them, and that there was no escape from it, undermining the original's intent. And that leaves us with Billy. Billy either gets shot in the back by his best friend, or if you believe Bushwick's claims, at the last second is saved by his friend and manages a quick escape. But even in this brighter take on events, at least theme wise, because Billy's trust in his friends eventually does save him, Billy is left without his tribe, left to wander New Mexico as an unknown cowboy. Why is the sequel so much darker than the original? One could argue that anytime death is covered, the affair will be solemn. But that's just not true. Movies like 300 cover death, but it's seen as a redemption, or at least an honorable one. No, I think the reason this happens, and the reason that happens with so many biopics, is because of the nature of storytelling. In traditional storytelling, we expect a beginning, middle, and end. But lives don't work like that. I mean, we are born, we do live, and we do die. But the places change. The people we know or meet change. And we definitely change. And we definitely change. Movies, on the other hand, need to keep stories as simple as they can. It's why Young Guns 2 brings back Doc and Chavez. The real Doc Spurlock and Chavez E. Chavez both left Lincoln County and never came back. They ended up dying peacefully of old age. The problem with this ending is that if you want a sequel, you also want your favorite characters to return. And in this case, it has to reach its logical conclusion. So they are killed, not for accuracy, but for story. The same thing happens with Billy. Framing Young Guns 2 as a tragedy means that he will have to lose everything. By all accounts, Billy the Kid was only shot once, by Pat Garrett, and thus his scars have to be emotional. The very framing of this story suggests only two outcomes. Billy the Kid loses all his friends and loved ones, goes into hiding, and becomes Bushwick Bill. And that's the positive outcome. The bad scenario is that Billy the Kid is shot in a Mexican saloon, alone, except for one friend that pulled the trigger. Either way, we needed an ending, and story convention tells us that the longer we stay with a character, the more tragic it's going to get. There was little chance a real Billy the Kid ever saw Dr. Chavez again, and even if they did, it was probably to visit, and not to go on one last adventure. And Billy's last friendship didn't both prove and disprove his way of life, as he was saved by a friend, but also cast out by him. He probably ended up passing away, as most outlaws did, in a room, alone, dying of a gunshot wound. By all accounts, Billy the Kid was shot in the back, in the dark. It probably wasn't very climactic, and no one probably learned a lesson. In fact, someone ended up killing Pat Garrett, of being able to say they killed Pat Garrett. So nothing was learned. It was just life. And maybe that's why it's better to tell part of a story. The original Young Guns tells us more about Billy the Kid than the sequel. His war with Lincoln County not only showed us that bit of his life, but we got to know him. We got to see not only his personality and the things that made him into the most famous outlaw in the Old West, but also the things that would consume him. The claim for fame, the bulletproof personality, and the love of his friends. In Young Guns, we learned everything we needed to know about Billy the Kid, while having enough mystery left that we wanted more. And I think that's the best kind of story. And isn't that the best kind of story? My name's Andrew Hada, and you've been watching The Deep Dive. give us a like and a subscribe to join us and see more deep dives and also see The Bomb Squad, where we appreciate the underappreciated. And don't forget to watch my movies, The Last Ones and Borderland, on Tubi.com. We'll see you guys next time on The Deep Dive.